On April 23, 2015, two high school students, Amanda Del Toro and Mackenzie Umscheid, interviewed a World War II and Cold War veteran.
What they found is not what you would find in a history book. They found Norm Winter.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripe and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming.
And this is his story.
War is hell. I was born on a farm near Palmer, Kansas, and it was in 13th of September 1924. My dad came to the United States when he was 16 years old. I believe that was about 1872. And my mother came over much later, around 1900. They both came from Germany. Now, there's a picture of my whole family right here. I was second to the youngest, third to the youngest. I had two younger sisters, and they're not even on this picture yet. They were born after this picture was taken. I had 11 brothers and sisters. My brother Herb, he was 5 years, Herbert, he was 5 years older than I, but we did a lot of things together on the farm, and also at night and evening, we went to dances and things like that together. I got into real bad trouble with my brother Herb. I was up in the loft in the barn, and I found a nest of chicken eggs up there, and I was tossing them down to my brother, and he was catching them and putting them away. So I was ornery enough. I hit one of the eggs against a piece of wood up there, rafter, and it was mostly broken. And I threw that down to him. Of course, he caught it and it went down both sleeves and over his both hands. And you know what I did? I got out of that loft and started running. Growing up in a family of 12, there was always something going on in the house. My mother and dad, they'd wake up early in the morning, and this is from my memory now. Dad would take about one step up the stairs and yell for all of us to get up. And if he didn't hear any feet hitting the floor upstairs, he'd take about 6 more steps up the stairs, and then he'd yell again, and by that time he'd hear the footsteps hitting the floor and getting out of bed. This is my childhood home. This was built 2 years, I was 2 years old when my dad had this house built. But the kids kept coming, and he didn't have any room anymore. So he built a house with 4 bedrooms, so we'd have enough room for everybody to have a place to sleep. We had 2 of them for a while. We lived in a smaller one while he was building this one. But we needed more room. And even then, we had great big bedrooms. There were 3 double beds in my bedroom, and there were 6 of us, the boys, sleeping in those 3 double beds. No, we got along fine. We had our altercations, and at night we'd be sitting around the dining room table after dinner. There was a bunch of us, and if we were quiet and did what we were supposed to do, everything was fine. If we got too noisy and we were aggravating my dad, he had a large switch stick up on top of the cabinet. He'd swing that around. He never did hit one of us. But when that stick started whistling in the air, things quieted down. On the farm, everything was a pet. I drove 4 horses in front of a plow or any other instrument, and our horses were all sort of like pets. We had to feed them, and we had to curry comb them, and we had 12 horses. Well, 8 horses and 4 mules. And I worked horses for days and days, sat on a plow and start plowing a 60-acre field with 2 12-inch plows pulled by 4 horses. You think of something boring. This is really boring. We had a mule, Jerry, he's white, and it had a kind of a round back. You could sit on him without the bones hitting your spine, and you could ride him. He was a good mule to ride. And we'd ride him if we wanted to go fishing somewhere. We'd put our stuff on in a bag and get on that mule and ride to the creek or someplace where we were going fishing. Well, our biggest advance in technology in my life was when we got electricity, REA, to our farm. It changed our life a lot. That was the biggest advantage we got. Before that, we had kerosene lamps and no power for the machinery that we later got with our electricity. That was really changed our life when we got electricity to the farm. I went to a little country grade school. It was called Peach Creek School. It was 1.5 miles from our house. A typical country school in Kansas during that period. We had one room, had a desk and a furnace that the teacher had to come early in the morning and build a fire in that furnace so the building be somewhat warm by the time we got there. We had to walk 1.5 miles to school, and in the winter time, we were pretty cold by the time we got to school. And she'd have a fire already built in that oven, and we moved some desks fairly close to the heating stove, the heating stove, so we could stay warm until the whole building got warmed up. So when I went to high school, I had to go 9 miles to Lynn, Kansas, to the Lynn Rural High School, and I had to ride with a neighbor, and I had him walk 1.5 miles, and he picked me up with his car, and we'd go up to Lynn to the school, and I paid him, I think, 50 cents a week to help him buy gas for his car. I played baseball when I was in high school. I pitched, and I also was a catcher. But I was not able to get back to school at night to be able to play basketball. But in baseball, basketball were the only sports that we had at that time. I was in the high school orchestra, and I played a violin. I should say, I struggled to play a violin. I went to the Brown Mackey Business College in Salina, Kansas, in September after that might be 1942. The Brown Mackey Business College. I went to school there about a year, and we took subjects like shorthand and typing and some bookkeeping. So that when I went in the Army, they said, "Oh, this guy's been to business college. He must be able to do something." I was about 18.5 years old and having a good time, working hard, had a couple girlfriends. And I got a card in the mail, and it said, "Your neighbors and friends have selected you for the Army." And I thought, who in the hell were those neighbors and friends? But I had a reporting date. I had to report to the county offices in Washington County, Kansas, and there was a bus there, and it took several of us to Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, where we were inducted into the Army. I put all my civilian clothes in the box, and they sent me back home, and I got Army clothes, not uniforms, fatigues, the regular work clothes. And I was in the Army. And you know how they get you in the Army? They line you up, And they say, tent, but you line up as good as you can. You haven't been in the Army before. So you kind of stand at attention. And then they say, left foot forward, march. One step forward. You're in the Army now. You're not behind the plow. You took that one step forward, and you were in the Army. And that's the day in life. I was adventurous. What's it going to be like? It was an adventure. My brother had been in the Army for quite a while already, so it was, that's what many of my friends were going into the Army already, you know. It was part of what we had to do at that time. By the time I got in the Army, he was already stationed down in the Panama Canal. He was guarding the Panama Canal with World War I rifles. They never had even had the World War II rifles down there yet. Basic training for some people might have been rough. For me, coming from the farm where I used to hard work, I thought it was pretty easy. I had to get used to the fact that I'm getting yelled at, getting demeaned. I don't know why they have to call you a bad name. I couldn't get used to that. Well, I had basic training in Fort Wood. It was Camp Wood, Texas. And I left Camp Wood, and they sent us home, and I had to report to Newton, Kansas on a certain date. A whole bunch of us had to report there, because that's where the train came through. We got on a train that took us to Camp Stoneman, basically Camp Stoneman, California. That's where we ended up. And that's where a whole bunch of us were being prepared to go over to the Pacific, to fight over in the Pacific somewhere. I was, when? It was 1944, maybe March, I think March of 1944. And we were on a ship for about 30 days from San Francisco to Philippine Islands. We went around by New Guinea, all the way from San Francisco to New Guinea. We were one ship with no escort, nothing around us. We were just on the Pacific Ocean with about 5,000 of us on that ship. No destroyers around. We got to New Guinea, and from there we didn't even get off the ship. But from New Guinea up to the Philippine Islands, we had an escort of several destroyers because we were getting into Japanese water where they had submarines and stuff. So we got to the Philippine Islands, and we climbed down rope ladders and got into little barge-like things, and they hauled us to the shore. We eventually got to where our camp was. We actually had some tents. But we had to dig a foxhole every night because there were still Japanese around there. Well, I was a private at first, PFC, and I carried stuff. I carried a gun, I carried ammunition, I carried 2 canteens with water. They were all fastened to us. We had probably had 50 to 60 pounds of material that we carried with us. A weapon, M1 rifle, extra. I was in the machine gun section. So we also had a case that had a whole belt of machine gun ammunition. I wasn't a machine gunner, but I was one of the carriers that put stuff up. You have to be physically fit because the Philippine Islands are not flat. They're very hilly. And we go up and down those hills carrying, I say 50 to 60 pounds. Getting out of the foxhole and having the danger of being shot. Good old Mother Earth protects you, but as soon as you're out of that foxhole and walking around, you become a target. And my best friend that I was drafted with, Morris Lee Olson, He was in a different unit. I saw him every day. His unit moved out. We moved out ahead of him, his unit. And when I was going by where he was, he said, "Hey, Norm, how was it up there?" I said, "Hasn't been so bad." The next day, his unit moved out, and he was shot and killed. And I went to high school with him, so the war became very close. I stayed in the Philippine Islands until wonderful president we had, President Truman. He dropped 2 bombs on the Japanese, one in Nagasaki and one on Hiroshima. And the Japanese decided they wanted to make peace real quickly, because the next one was when I went to Tokyo. They knew that or figured it. So they made peace real quickly. And once they made peace, we didn't get it home right away because there just weren't enough ships to take us all home at once. So we stayed there in the Philippine Islands. I think I got home the day before Christmas, 1945. I got my home. I got to Fort Riley and I called my brother, and he came down to Fort Riley and picked me up. I got home for Christmas, 1945. After the war was over with, everybody more or less went on their own ways. I don't correspond with any of them. There were a few from Kansas that I saw occasionally. But he started a new life once the war was over with. He went back home and started over. I was a free man again. Freedom was wonderful. In the Army, you're not free. You're duty bound to do whatever they tell you. And not only duty bound, patriotically bound to do what's going to be done to defend your country. People laugh about patriotism, but it's not patriotism. It's a valid feeling you have. I still have a valid feeling when I see the flag. I've been all over the world.
Yeah.
I've been in the Army. I went to the Philippine Islands during World War II. I spent 17 years in Germany in the Army because I speak German. They kept sending me back there. So, I spent 25 years in the Army. I did a lot of good things. Some weren't so good, but I didn't get caught. This used to belong to a German pilot in the German Army Air Force during World War II. That was worn on their belt as a decoration. It wasn't really a weapon, it was a decoration. And this one is another decoration that the Army officers that were in the group that built the Autobahns or engineer officers. This was their decoration they wore on their uniform like this. And a slogan on this is, "Work makes noble. Arbeit macht." Yeah, Arbeit adelt. It makes noble. Work makes noble. So those are some artifacts I brought along. Here, this is a smaller box, but it's got some neat stuff in it. You see this bolt? Just an ordinary bolt, right? I was in the intelligence business during the war. And this bolt went in somebody's toolbox on their motorcycle or truck or whatever, and they could put a whole bunch of microfilm inside, and they could screw it shut, and they threw it in the toolbox. Nobody ever found out that they had microfilm in that bolt. This is the patch I wore on my uniform during World War II. This is the 37th Infantry Division patch. It's a Buckeye because this was a Buckeye division from Ohio. So I got that. These are two cufflinks that I got from a general that was visiting Fort Riley, VAD student, that I was in charge of a detail that took care of him while he was at Fort Riley, and they gave me these two cufflinks. I've got his name on there somewhere. I don't have my glasses to read it. I think my favorite memento is that I got out of the war with a whole body and a whole mind. That was a lot of guys who get that done. This is a good friend of mine, General Ferguson. He was commanding general at Fort Riley, and I was in his office, and I received a decoration there, and he made sure that he gave that to me in his office in Fort Riley. It was actually an Army Commendation Medal, because I did some work there at Fort Riley. They thought it was important. This is the Legion of Merit. Not many people get this. That's given for not so much for valor, but for continued excellent work. Legion of Merit. That's probably the highest ranking. This is Bronze Star. You get this Bronze Star actually for combat, something you did in combat. Heroism, or at least they thought it was heroism. A lot of that time we thought it was just our everyday work, but that is a Bronze Star. This is the Pacific Ribbon. That's for being stationed in the Philippine Islands, all through the South Pacific during World War II. So this is the South Pacific Ribbon. This is the American Service Ribbon. That's for duty I did in the States during World War II. This is what I'm most proud of. This is after the war, American Service Ribbon after the war. And this is the Army Commendation Ribbon. And over here somewhere. You don't believe it, but that's a good conduct medal. Well, I think the separation from family, friends, and my normal life, completely new life, and some of it wasn't very pleasant. So it was a change, drastic change, and a lack of freedom. In the military, you have no personal freedom. I spoke German with my mother and dad, and I spoke English with my 11 brothers and sisters. But I was 5 years old, or 4 or 5. I was bilingual. You could ask me a question in German, I answered in German, and ask me a question in English, I answered in English. That was very easy to learn a foreign language that way. You learn it as a child; it's there forever. Later on, I learned Russian language, and it's a difficult language anyway. And I went to Russian language school for a year. When I had a good basis of the Russian language, I never got to use it. Heute ist ein wunderschöner Tag. Today is a wonderful, beautiful day. In Baltimore, Maryland. I was going to the counterintelligence school in Baltimore, Maryland. And as a young guy like that, I went to a nightclub and I met this very lovely Italian girl. And I got acquainted with her and took her out a few times, met her family. They seemed to like me. And after about 6 or 8 months, we got married in Baltimore, Maryland. We got married in the Army chapel with an Army chaplain doing the performance. We were riding in my vehicle, the truck or car, and I had purchased an engagement ring. And I reached over and put it on her lap. I said, "You might want to look at this." She looked at it. Then I said, "Are you going to marry me?" And she said, "Yes." Wasn't that romantic? I have a daughter. She lives in Virginia. Her name is Natalie. And I have a son that lives near Manhattan. His name is Timothy. Oh, they're old, 60-some, 61 and 62, I think. But they were awfully good kids. And it was lucky there was two of them, because I was gone a lot. I was in the Army. And they were good company for each other when I wasn't around. Many years, I was gone sometimes for years at a time. I retired from the Army in 1969, after I had been in the Army 25 years. I retired from the Army in 1969. Well, I was retired in Manhattan to a house in Manhattan, Kansas. That's where I purchased that. I was home in Manhattan, Kansas. And I found out that that there was an opening for a person that's interested in security and safety at the McCall Pattern Company in Manhattan, Kansas. I applied for that position, and I was hired, and I stayed in that position, where I also did most of the interviewing for new hires. And I stayed with the McCall Pattern Company for 25 years. And I retired from there. I was about 70 years old. I worked all my life. I went to a dance at the American Legion in Manhattan, Kansas on a Saturday evening. And I'd been a bachelor for about 10 years. But I went there on a Saturday evening quite frequently to see what would show up. And she came in with her aunt and uncle. And the first time I saw her, and I said, well, this is a new face. So I made steps right away to get acquainted. And after a few months of getting acquainted, we got married.
If you could give one piece of advice to this generation, what would it be?
Be honest, work hard. Be honest and work hard and be. I'm a very devout Christian. And be a Christian. Du kannst nicht treu sein, nein, nein, das kannst du nicht, denn auch kein wunderbare Liebe verspricht. And that song is, you can't be true, dear, no, you can't be true, although your lips are promising true love. I think it better in German than in English. And the rockets red glare, the bumpers sting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Got too low. Say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave for the land of the free and the home of the